And welcome back to JKLive live here at Citizen Television. What a great debate. GMOs, the scientific and political divide. A story that simply just won't go away. Dr. Richard Odwar from KU is in the house. Emmanuel Atamba from Root to Food is here. And online by Zoom, Dr. Roy Mugira is the CEO, National Biosafety Authority. Professor Odwar, before the break, I asked you the question, are you scientists simply talking to each other? You've forgotten about the rest of us.
Yes and no. We talk to each other when we are in the platform of science. That time, we talk to each other. But when it involves talking to the public, then we have to get down to the level of the public. And when you hear the public talking the way we are watching, it's really a challenge to us. And that is why soon after the mounting of the ban, we established as experts in biotechnology that Kubiko that you're hearing is Kenya University Biotechnology Consortium. It brings together experts in biotechnology from both private and public university for that, and we advance safe application of that modern biotechnology. So we are in ourselves are peer reviewing what we do, and that is how science really grows. I just wanted to comment also alongside this on what probably Emmanuel said, that what are the germplasm or the varieties that we so far have made locally in the lab. Just to let him know that it takes 15 years to come up with a genetically modified variety. It starts from the lab, takes a while, confined field trial, confined, and then eventually NPT, which is just national performance trial. And it takes a while. So we are at a stage where whatever we have has undergone the process of the lab, and soon we will apply for them to be taken to the field, and then after that to different places, and eventually it will be here. But you see, Jeff, anytime I hear people say that where are our local GMO, we are happy with our local GMO, it is the same technology that has been used for the other one as well. So anytime when somebody says, we want our local one, let Professor Odwar give us his, then the discussion around safety has collapsed, because then it's about who is doing it. So it means you have agreed with it, only that you don't want it coming from South Africa, or you don't want it coming from the US, and therefore, at that point, then we shouldn't be talking about safety then. The discussion should be then, how can we then speed up the one that we have locally, so that we call those our own. Because the reason why it perturbs me when people say that, why is the rush? There is no rush, Jeff. In Africa, as we are talking right now, and I want them to note, we have 8 countries that have adopted this technology. In South Africa, we have South Africa, we have Eswatini, and we have Malawi. East Africa, we have Kenya, Sudan, and Ethiopia. To the west, we have Nigeria and Ghana. And Burkina Faso tested it, Egypt also tested it before, and Uganda, and all these countries are at advanced stage of developing and testing theirs as well. What I want to say is that it has taken this government, even with this Seralini paper, by the way, when it was mounted, South Africa never banned it, they still enjoyed it. Meaning that they have tested it, they have benefited from it for years, and therefore they are seeing it as just one of the solutions. It's a complementary solution. And for that reason, let me also say something, because you hear people saying, who are the local scientists? This maize that is coming, who locally has done research on it? Come on, surely. The drugs that, and the drugs that we are taking, Jeff, the process of developing a drug, because my postdoc was in drug discovery from Pfizer, and that's why I have very fair understanding of debating GM food and also drugs, because I know how the drug is done from Pfizer. When you start to think about a drug from preclinical through to CAN, through to prescription bit, through to clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3s, and all that, and even after release to the market, we in this country, we don't have a pharmaceutical company that is Kenyan that is doing drug discovery for this country. The drugs that we are, or companies that we have locally, are either doing generics, or are franchise, or are just manufacturing the formulation that they are getting from another company from the West. Now, once that drug is here. We never questioned that, who locally did actually the research on Fansida. Because there is something called clinical trial, there is preclinical. So it goes through a very stringent, regulation, such that when it gets here, it is okay. Kenya is becoming very unique in this debate on GMO, that now, uniquely, if we are happy with Cartagena Protocol as a universal treaty that is governing all of us, the research and the process of developing GMO is not unique to Kenya. The process of containment, confinement, and all this regulation is the same thing that is happening in the US. It is the same thing that happens in South Africa when they develop theirs. It's the same thing we are doing here. But now Kenya is saying, does not believe that the regulation that has happened in the other side is good enough. What do you do as a country? Is that anything that has been done somewhere else, there is the peer review bit, but also there is your own internal regulatory agencies. That is why there is NBA. Even with all these tests that have happened abroad, when they get here, NBA must still check and say, okay, you said this is what it is, this is what we have verified, and we feel this is what is correct. So unless we are developing new rules that are going to govern Kenya only.
Yeah.
Emmanuel, go ahead.
You know, Jeff, Professor is mixing two things here. And, I don't know, how many drugs have you taken today?
Quite a number.
Today? Today?
Yes,
okay.
yes. I've taken
but, basically what I'm trying
I've taken quite a number, literally, by the way.
But I have not taken any medicine. Have you taken any medicine today?
Not today.
Medicine is different from food.
Uh-oh.
We are talking about something that we are consuming daily. And, you are giving an example of something completely different. For example, even the example of COVID vaccines. I mean, you get 2 jabs. I mean, that's it.
I will respond to that.
And maybe a booster or something like that. So if the COVID vaccine was, made through biotechnology or through GMO technology, it does not mean that now we have to, make our food in the same way. Food and medicine is completely different. So I would want us to not mix the two. But I think aside from that, the question of science, because, when people call themselves scientists, and you ask the question, are they speaking to themselves? Sometimes, even for those of us in civil society, if you don't go out and don't interact with people, and don't make sure that you discuss these issues, you will not understand what the issues are on the ground. And that is why, Professor is saying he's frustrated because he is feeling very strongly and very passionately about this. And I want to correct, I'm not saying, when I was asking where his varieties are, it's not because I want to support his varieties, or because if he comes up with these varieties, I'm going to grow them. I'm never going to grow GMOs. And, no, that is not something I'm going to be interested in. But I am asking because he is here championing, saying, okay, let them come, but they are not his. This is what he's not telling the Kenyans. Professor Oduor, the name Oduor, Kenyans will, this is our own Kenyan local scientist. So if he's saying these things are correct, if he's saying he's involved, then people are willing to trust. But the truth is, whatever is coming, we do not have control. It is not ours. The seeds that you asked, the seeds, I'm being told they're coming from a company in South Africa, which I think maybe could basically be a subsidiary of Monsanto that is coming from South Africa. The BT cotton seeds that we have been growing here have been coming from a company called Mexico in India. And he's not talking about that. Dr. Mugira is not talking about the BT cotton. BT cotton was allowed in 2019, since December 2019, through a cabinet decision. Up to now, can they tell us, have you heard any farmers talking about the progress they have made, the TVs they have bought, the cars they have bought from growing BT cotton? They were promised heaven. These farmers are complaining today. The seeds are expensive. The things that they were promised, they are not able to see on the ground. And, this is things that they know.
Let me ask you, Dr.
So
Roy,
it has already failed.
Dr. Roy, is that true about the BT cotton, that it was a failure?
I think that, thank you, Jeff. That is really a sweeping statement that I wouldn't want to associate with, that indeed there isn't any benefit. Look, again to Emmanuel, the specific trait that BT cotton has is to protect it from the cotton bollworm. So what is considered as benefit is that that particular cotton will not be destroyed by the bollworm. And the farmers have just had this crop for I think the third season is going now.
Oh, okay. I think we're losing the signal on you, Dr. Roy. But let me ask, are you back? Can you hear me?
Sorry, yeah, I can hear you, Jeff.
Okay, go ahead. It's gone again. It's gone again. Okay, Professor Roy, maybe
maybe before he responds, the question is, can they explain if they have done monitoring to show that there is significant value? Because when you say that we were only, this is only modified for one trait, but farmers are not growing cotton for pest resistance. They are growing cotton for livelihoods.
Right.
And that is why we are saying, yes, you might have gone to the laboratory and come up with Bt maize, which is resistant to pest A, B, C, D, okay? But I am growing maize not for pest resistance. I am growing maize for business. I am growing maize for consumption. So whether it is pest resistant or not, if the economics of it does not work, of what good is it?
Professor Richard.
I'm listening to Emmanuel and I'm thinking that he's getting off the topic, because is he therefore saying that pests are not attacking maize and therefore we should not have improved seeds that are tolerant to pests? And we are saying that your seed that you have, if it is still susceptible to pests, you will not get sufficient yields. And remember, I hear people also talk about pesticides and they link it with GMO. You see, herbicides and they link it with GMO. A herbicide is sprayed because of the weeds. And this is the basic explanation, Jeff, that in the US, you can find somebody with 500,000 acres of maize, or 1 million acres. Now in Kenya, sometimes I think that there is no large-scale farmer in this country, because I don't think there is a single farm that is 1 acre or 2 acres, 2 million acres. So the challenge was that if you have 1 million acres of maize, and weeding, and he knows this, should happen within a specific time, beyond which it now impacts the yields. So if maize is ready for weeding, within those 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that is the time when if you weed it, you will get the best of the yields. Now, imagine you have 1 million acres, and you have to line up half of the population to do manual weeding. Now, that is when the technology for herbicide, this Roundup you keep hearing, started. We decided and said, why can't we have maize which is just normal, but you make it the glyphosate you hear, so that your maize that is genetically modified is tolerant to a herbicide. So you plant in 1 million acres, you come just with your plane and you spray all over maize, including the weeds and everything. The weeds will die because they are susceptible to the herbicide, but your maize will remain. Meaning, in a single day or 2-3 days, you are done with 1 million acre of weeding. That is actually the technology, and he knows it. Now, I want to challenge Kenyans. If you buy this seed that is pest tolerant and is also herbicide tolerant, and your farm, because we are smallholder farmers, why would you want to go to buy a herbicide to spray within 1/4 acre? And these are the kind of discussion that I want actually the public to understand. That anytime you get a GM seed, you ask, what trait has it been improved against? So if it is herbicide, you pick it and you go weed. You wouldn't need herbicide actually to spray. If it is against actually pests and your area does not have the pest, plant the other one that doesn't have the pest tolerance. Go ahead. If it's against drought, and you are in probably Rift Valley where it rains 24/7, and the only difference now here is because it is drought tolerant and it's a bit costly, assuming that the seed was a bit costly, then you live by the hybrids that are there because you have enough water. So drought is not your problem. That is the diversity that we want to give our farmers, and all we are saying is that let's discuss GMO case by case. So you say, this, whatever is coming, which seed have you improved? And that's why I liked when he talked about Bt cotton, he's talking about Bt maize, and many other traits. So far right now in this country, we are only talking about Bt, by the way. Bt technology, Bt cotton, Bt maize. There is nothing else. The only other diversity that we are having is the one that now we are having in the lab, that we have already made drought tolerant, cassava that is low level of cyanide, and there's one cassava that is about to be out there, which is virus, resistant. And that has been developed by our own professor here, Professor Miano from University of Nairobi. It's at an advanced stage. So things are happening behind the scene for this country. Yeah. It is just so sad that anytime we talk GMO, we get emotional. We start bringing fearful statements, and we start wondering whether we are doing the right thing or not. And by the way, Jeff, GMO will be labeled. So this idea of choice is not compromised at all. Even in the US and South Africa, where we have been living and eating these foods, it is labeled. Because there are things in this country, I don't know whether he eats omena that he mentioned in his introductory remarks, but some people cannot eat omena. I don't know whether you enjoy omena. I love omena. You love omena. You are very lucky, and thank you for that. Some people, they look at it and they say they can't eat this thing that is looking at them. Right. Why? And it is not banned. Yeah. It is not, but it's, food, Jeff, is about choice. It's about preference. It's about socialization. I struggled before I started eating seafood. I wasn't looking at those octopus and wondering, is that edible? And I had a very crazy experience, my first interaction with that. And you know what it means with seafood. And it is not GMO, it's not banned. It's just because I just don't like it. So that is what we are saying. GMO, we are not forcing it to the farmers or to the populace. All we are saying, give farmers and the country opportunity to choose. GMO, let it be labeled, and the regulator is there, Roy, and he will tell you he's so stern on that one. You let it be labeled. When I go to the supermarket, and we have done it in South Africa or wherever, you just walk in, you say, this is GMO, this is not GMO. I go this direction or the other direction. Because the basic thing here, Jeff, BT, which is the most immediate, is not harmful to ourselves as human beings. Why? Because the toxin is specific to the gut of that particular stem borer. That's it. And our guts are not alkaline. And I can tell you, if our guts are alkaline, I wouldn't support GMO, the BT. I wouldn't, because I would say bring another one that has got a toxin that does not stick to an alkaline gut, because human guts and probably that stem borer is the same. As it is right now, there is a reason why when you take the drug against, say, even certain, say, tonsillitis, when you are given antibiotic, that antibiotic is going to kill a cell. How does that drug go and get to the cell, say Plasmodium for malaria, and leaves your body cells, and all those things are cells? It is something we call in drug discovery specificity. And it must make sense. Also, when Emmanuel says that what was the advantage of this BT thing, I am telling him that when a seed, and even the conventional ones, and Roy can tell you this, for you to get a variety that can be released, it must meet a certain percentage beyond the existing one. If it doesn't go beyond that, it actually, whether organic or otherwise, it's not released. And the reason why BT cotton and maize are released is because of that differential advantage that it gives over its conventional counterpart. And it is, and other things we do, we look at tests before it goes out. That we look at the allergenicity, we look at toxicity, we look at the impact of it to environment. We actually also extrapolate the biodiversity effects and even the potential for gene flow. Even when we talk about this terminator gene that they keep talking about, that GM maize will not germinate, I wonder. I'm very glad that at least Emmanuel has gone to school and he introduced himself and said that he has a BSc. That's why I'm happy to debate with him, because he's not saying many of these things I hear out here, which most of this anti. And I have to appreciate him for that. That he's very logical in his argument, and that's fine. You will still hear you will still hear people talking about the GMO seeds. When you plant them, they don't germinate. Yeah. And I ask them, where is that technology? And if there is something like that, and I want again to educate the public, that technology that stops alive to germinate is the technology we need for cancer. Because cancer is uncontrolled cell division. And therefore, that terminator gene is still a very good technology in the medical world. Because if we have this particular gene that when we can actually use through the nanoparticles, and it goes and identifies the cancer cell and stops it from cell dividing, we are done with cancer. And these are technologies. So when we talk terminator, it might not be appropriate for for the GM foods, but it is very appropriate for the drug discovery platform. And the idea was that terminator was actually addressing their problem around gene flow. So when they started saying, because initially there were those court cases that were people went to court and litigation, then the scientists said, why can't we then say that make a technology that will stop it so that the GMO is grown once and it can't regrow again, so that you still keep your original seeds, so that there's nothing that is happening with your original seeds.
Let me ask Dr. Roy Mugira. Dr. Roy, if you're still with us and if you can still hear us, look, Professor Richard said Kenyans, when they walk into a supermarket or convenience store, they will be able to tell what is GMO, what's non-GMO. Is that true? I mean, will Kwamboka or Wangira or, Mwangi or, Suleiman, will they all be able to walk in there and they'll be told, hey, this is GMO, this is not GMO?
Yes, Jeff. In 2012, we published the Biosafety labeling regulations. And following that, the Kenya Bureau of Standards published a standard on labeling. So any product that will go within a packaging system will have a clear label that this is GM material. There is a standard that describes how that label will be, and also some text that will describe what kind of genetic modification it is. So yes, indeed, and that is not only a Kenyan requirement, is an international requirement. But also to emphasize, Jeff, that the need for labeling is not a safety issue, it is to facilitate choice. Just like Emmanuel said, one may choose that I don't want this, and therefore they should be facilitated to make that choice by making a label.
Wonderful. Gentlemen, let's get some feedback as you think of your answers. Let's get some feedback. Quick, a lot of people asking a lot of questions, and it's coming in very thick and very fast. Kithure Kindiki, I don't know if it's Mheshimiwa himself. I don't know. But he says, Mexico has banned the importation of GMOs products from America for human consumption. Why should we all, or rather, why should we allow it in our country? Let the GMOs advocate on the bench, focus on agricultural products. He is not an expert on human genome. Prof?
Well, probably I can unpack that a little, if you give me a few minutes. You know the reason why maize in America is basically not grown for human consumption. They don't eat maize a lot more. You've been there. Maize is for animal feed.
Correct.
And actually, if you look at the maize as the kernel, like the photos that we are seeing, you cannot feed cows with it because they have a bit of stomach problems. The cows cannot eat ugali and feel comfortable. But they will eat everything else, the leaves, the stalks, and everything else. Now, actually what people don't understand is that the kernels that we eat here, because of our socialization and everything else, actually is a waste product, is a byproduct of why they grow maize, because it's for animal feed. So literally, and it is a trade issue, they can actually afford to give you for free because their stores are full. They can afford because it's not their food. Just like if you give me fufu, even if there is a lot of cassava, you will still give me cassava and there's ugali. I will leave cassava and go for ugali because ugali is what I'm socialized to have. And that is the reason why I keep saying that it's likely to be cheaper for us because that's what we want. So if you see that Mexico-US thing, that's a trade thing. It's a trade thing because it's like, why are we getting yours when we have our own? We don't want it for the economic reasons. And that debate is no longer about safety. It is about, I don't want to do this. Like what Kenyans right now are saying, like we are harvesting, why are you importing? Do you know they have a point in terms of, have you quantified what we have, and then the difference is what you are importing. And I said in my introductory platform that the debate on GMO right now, importation, even if that the maize was organic, you will still hear this discussion because it speaks to something else which is not safety, it's not GMO, it is about economy.
All right.
And that's true.
Let's move on. Samson Chialo says, the issue of GMOs has been over-politicized.
Yeah.
Kindly let the panel of experts on the bench answer the following key questions. 1, safety of GMOs. 2, impact on local production. 3, impact on research. 4, success stories of GMOs around the globe.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's the safety of GMOs has not been confirmed globally. There is no confirmation of 100% safety. And that is why Dr. Roy Mugira has a job. Otherwise, he would be jobless now. If there is complete safety, he would not be regulating anything. So that Kenyans should understand that. When they say 30 years old, no one has eaten this thing full cycle to know that it is safe. The other day, Bill Gates was here. He said he has been eating GMO bread all his life. But I mean, where was he getting the GMO bread? So basically, the safety of GMOs has not been confirmed. There are real impacts on local production. Up to date, the national biosafety laws that the National Biosafety Authority is custodian for, they do not have what you would call coexistence, mechanisms, where if I don't want to grow GMOs, then I am protected from this flow of genes. He has just confirmed, the professor has just confirmed, that the genes can still flow. That if someone is growing GMO maize and the pollen crosses to your plot, there is potential for injurious pollination. And therefore, there is no safeguards in terms of protecting local farmers who don't want to grow it. The other question on success stories of GMOs around the world, I don't know. Maybe they can tell us, because even America, where he's talking about, and Professor says, in America, he talks about 1 million acres. He has rightly said we don't have 1 million acres here. We do not have the kind of system that is in America. We live in our farms, we eat the food that we grow in those farms, and we grow primarily to eat ourselves. And we work on those farms. And people have no problem weeding in this country because we have small farms. And those small farms produce 80% of our food. So if we are talking about 1 million acres, then we are talking about a different country. Yeah. So this is not a technology that is for our context. And that is something that people should be able to really differentiate. The fact that it works in South Africa and it works in the US, let people understand the land tenure system there. Let people understand the farming approaches there. Yeah. It is completely different from ours.
Dr. Roy, do you want to comment on any of those points?
Yes, Jeff, on the safety, remember our authority is the National Biosafety Authority. We determine safety of GM technology on a case-by-case basis. So when we check the safety of BT maize, we check the safety of that trait of BT in maize, and there are a number of checks that we do, and therefore, just like Emmanuel says, there cannot be a blanket statement that all is safe or all is not safe. We conduct that on a case-by-case basis, and indeed, that is why we exist. Jeff?
Okay, absolutely. Engineer Lazaro says, we shouldn't dwell so much on Moses Kuria's statements. Right. Experts should come out open to explain the advantage and disadvantages of GMO. We're being told that our strong immune system depends largely on what we eat. Professor Richard, we are what we eat.
Correct. And
if we put garbage in?
Garbage out. And what's the garbage that we're putting in? That's the question. If you have your maize that has, is insect protected, is that garbage? It has not tampered with your proteins. Your carbohydrates are still intact. If there's a bit of lipid, it's not affected. We are not actually genetically modifying proteins, which is what the body requires. We are just protecting it against attacks from the pests. So it's not a garbage. And the moment we start appreciating that, then we will do a good... And Emmanuel doesn't like the Githeri example, but I will still repeat it so that we simplify this. Githeri has beans and maize for one reason, that maize gives us carbohydrates and beans gives us proteins. Simple. If right now, because the climate change is happening, if we get to a point that we can't actually plant beans, and therefore bean is going, it's getting out of the world, but we still want proteins. So what do? We pick the genes that are dying with the beans and move it into maize so that our maize still can express, because they are both plants, can express the proteins so that the maize has both carbohydrates and has, proteins. At that point, that maize will be called genetically modified maize. And Emmanuel will be here jumping saying that, hey, this is GMO and it's very bad. Yet naturally he eats the beans together with that DNA. The fact that we have now moved, we have just moved the DNA. By the way, DNA is not a chemical. DNA, anything that is alive, we eat cows, we eat pork, we eat all these things we eat. They have DNA. And when Emmanuel was saying that, you know, food is something that we eat every day and therefore is dangerous, what has been happening with our bodies that we have been eating ugali ever since we were born, and we are not growing up with leaves on our ears? What happened to those DNA? The moment we make it that simple, then people will understand that, by the way, we need to drive this discussion to say, this is a GMO, what is in it? If you realize that, oh, it is just protecting the insect and the proteins are not tampered with, the carbohydrates are still good, your vitamins are right, eat it. It's okay. It is very right.
Emmanuel, you're still not convinced.
No, I think that Githeri story, I will not allow my villagers to take it. You know, it's completely false that GMOs is like mixing maize and beans. It's completely different. And I agree with the Prof. When we eat things, we don't take the DNA out, the materials from the cells out. Because basically these are materials within the nucleus. We don't take them out. We eat together. But the reason why everyone has a problem with GMO maize, for example, the BT maize, it's not because it has these BT genes. No, it is because of the protein that is expressed through the mRNA to create the toxin that is potentially now being claimed to have the pest resistance. So that is we are not talking about the DNA. So, I mean, Kenyans are smart enough to understand the issues. And we shouldn't, you know, oversimplify it. And I want to emphasize that Professor Oduor is not a professor of my stomach and your stomach. So you decide. If you feel something is not safe, you have the right to question. So the fact that Professor said it is safe, it does not mean that it is safe. Yeah, because we have to interrogate. All consumers have a role to really interrogate and be responsible in the decisions that they made in consumption.
Absolutely. John Williams says there are still a lot of gaps with the GMO issue. It is said GMO foods could cause resistance to drugs as well as establish allergies in the human body. Eating such foods contributes to the emergence of antibiotic-resistant diseases. Any insights from the panel?
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Roy?
Well, when we do a risk assessment, we check first on toxicity and potential for allergenicity. I do not know whether the particular question is pointing towards generalities, but we check for potential toxicity, and all proteins that are known to cause toxins have been sequenced, and their sequence data has been placed on a database. So we query with the sequence of the protein that we have at hand, for example, the protein that comes from BT. So that one is a huge statement, Jeff, out there, that indeed I would ask Prof maybe to weigh in on this a bit.
Prof, real quick.
Yes, the issue about antibiotic resistance is a global issue. It's an issue that actually has attracted a lot of debate. It's not about the GMO. Actually, a while ago, when we were using antibiotics for selection so that you get to know which one picked the gene or which one didn't, is when the antibiotic was being used as a selectable marker to develop GMO. And the person talking about antibiotic resistance, it's because of the exposure of antibiotics in the environment, and when the bacteria or the pathogen interacts with it a lot more, it develops resistance. But there are a lot of studies that have actually pointed to the development of resistance resulting from the behavior of the patients themselves. When you're given antibiotics, and this is very important, you need to make sure that you clear the whole of it, because if you don't, it will not have killed the bacteria, and the bacteria will still start developing resistance. This is a problem that is more about the behavior and how we treat antibiotics and not GMO as such. And we know rules in this country, you know, you have been to places where you can't buy antibiotics over the counter.
Correct.
You must get prescription. But in this country, you walk into any chemist, you will get antibiotics. You take once, twice, you don't feel any pain in your neck because tonsillitis is gone. You drop the remaining dosage. And that means the bacteria just relaxed a little bit, went down, but it has developed something. So next time when you try again, it won't work. And that is a challenge. It's beyond GMO. It's not about GMO alone. Yeah.
Good point, good point. Turanta Tanintita says, approval of GM products is a green light for research in Kenya, a step in the right direction. The government should fund research, whether genetic or otherwise. We'll be amazed at the solutions Kenyan researchers have to the challenges we face. All right, some closing thoughts. Let's start with you, Professor Roy, out there. Going forward, I know there's a ship that docked in Mombasa from Maputo today. I guess, you know, the train has left the station, so to speak.
That's a big story, Jeff. A question was asked by Emmanuel whether we knew this ship is coming. When the ship is loaded with material and is coming, and I want to remind ourselves that when the ban was instituted, we established an office in Mombasa at the port. We established another one in Namanga and another one in Busia under the JKLive, so that we are able to tell what is coming in. And one thing that happens before even the ship docks, a document comes forward called a manifest. It is out of that manifest that we are able to pick that is of our interest. And therefore, this was coming. The customs knew it is coming. They shared the information with us. We checked and saw that it isn't GM material, and therefore, it's not of our interest. But what I want to close by saying, Jeff, is that we want to allow our farmers, our researchers, our technology developers choice, so that they have one more tool in their toolkit. But again, I must be cautious even as I say this, because my role is really to regulate. Like I said earlier, is to make sure that the developers don't run away and become rogue. And on the other hand, is to assure those who are not very sure that indeed what we have done and checked and confirmed that it is safe. We do all what need to be done according to codex and according to many other standards, international standards, and therefore we check to confirm that it's safe. In fact, it is the most regulated kind of product, and therefore people should have confidence in the institutions that we have. Finally, Jeff, a need has been identified, and I want to rally even our colleagues from the civil society represented here by Emmanuel, and our team in the schools at the universities by Prof here, and yourself from the media, tusaidieni kupeleka ujumbe. Na sasa vile tuko kwa idara ya agriculture, tutatumia the architecture ya devolved agriculture to be able to reach mashinani. Asante, Jeff.
Asante sana, Daktari. Nashukuru sana. Emmanuel Atamba, your closing thoughts.
Yeah, food will always be a political issue. And the decisions that we take about our food are going to always have an implication. Kenyans are not happy about what is going on, you know, being put in a situation where, you know, when the media reports that a sheep has docked, then everyone starts to assume, first of all, it is GMO. It's a very bad place to be as a human being, where we are not sure about what is going to come tomorrow, where we are not sure about what is actually happening around the food that we eat. And I think it is important that those involved pay very close attention to what they're doing, because, you know, we have moved as a country, you know, from politics of, you know, Professor Duor versus Atamba from, you know, Western, and this is from Luo Nyanza, and this is from Central and all that. We have moved from tribal politics to a very significant level in the last election. And the next election will more or less also move more towards issues. And part of the issues that, you know, might really form basis for people to decide elections are issues like this. And when you hear Kenyans saying outside there that we are frustrated, that the government is not listening to us, that no one is asking us, no one is consulting with us, you know, some of these questions have to be taken with the magnanimity that requires, because these are not light issues. And whoever thinks that there is market for GMO food in this country, you know, I welcome them to try. We have advised that this is premature, that this is not consultative, that this is not the right to food. This does not enhance food security. It actually compromises food security. It adds another layer of bureaucracy where Dr. Mugira is now a very important person and has to check everything that comes and all that and has to monitor and all this. But, you know, really, in terms of the actual delivery of food to the plate, it does not help to bring GMOs into this country. But if you know, the government does not listen and go ahead, let them go ahead. We will be there to monitor and see, okay, so how much GMO maize have you sold? Because there is no market for GMO maize in this country, and consumers are going to vote every day, 3 times a day about these GMOs. And every meal that consumers are going to have in the villages, in the houses, in the towns, in the cities, in the towns down there, in the urban areas and the rural areas, every meal they're going to have is going to be a vote. And they're going to vote for GMO ugali or non-GMO ugali. And every meal, GMO is going to lose that vote because consumers have clearly expressed that they don't want to eat this food. And I want to encourage farmers to keep their seeds. This is something like, you know what, Ali Kiba sang a song, it was a love song, but it's very relevant because he said, usiteme bigiji kwa karanga za kuonjeshwa. This is karanga za kuonjeshwa, so we should not throw away our seeds, we should not throw away our practices, let us stick to our practices. We can monitor, we can see if Professor Odwor proves us wrong, but we have to maintain what we have. So let everyone maintain what they have. We have to maintain a strong food system that is really, you know, democratic and not controlled by a few people. Absolutely. These GMOs is not about us, it is about them. And that's why the first thing they are doing is trying to bring us GMO maize. It is not our farmers who have grown that maize. So clearly, let us protect our own.
Professor Richard Odwor, you get the last word.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thanks again for the invitation. I like the optimism that Emmanuel has regarding the rejection of GMO when it gets to the shelves. And you have nothing to do. You can't stop that. It's a supply-demand mechanism. So when it gets here, it will be labeled. NBA has already assured us. And once it is there, people will have a choice. And the choice for food is not because it is GMO or because it's safety, it's also preference and socialization. However good probably you would put for me fufu or whatever thing, I will still not eat it, whether it's organic or otherwise. It's my choice. And therefore, I'm still looking for, you know, to the future where, you know, the public has a choice to pick what they want. I'm grateful that among many other things that the government has done, it's also, one of them is improving the seeds. You see, it's not like the government is you know, lifted the ban and has not spoken to the fertilizer, has not spoken to irrigation. All these things, and I like the whole idea, all these things are popping up. So the government has talked about the fertilizers, has subsidized, dams are here, optimization of the value system is happening, is just actually bringing another seed that is protected. Let it get here, let's try it as Kenyans. If it doesn't work, and I want Kenyans to give very optimistic, you know, objective comments, we as scientists have a responsibility to go and find out what works, because that's the responsibility that we have as scientists. And therefore, for me, I want to thank the government, because finally, we have a face-to-face our students who have been doing the biotech courses which we teach them in the university using taxpayers' money. Now, at least they can graduate and start applying this technology, because with the ban, they were unable to. And also now, we are telling, actually, even the government to add more funding to the research so that we are able to use that is coming in and also complement with what we are developing locally so that we can secure this country in terms of food security. Jeff, hunger is painful. And my heart goes out to our friends and our relatives who are actually going hungry. And if we don't watch this, we are going to see very serious catastrophe in this country. I am really pleading with the public that let the GMO be here. Let it be checked by NBA. Once it is verified, and we are also watching, because we are scientists, we live here, take us to task and say, we have picked these ones. What do you say about it? We will subject them into our local training, you know, research, and we'll tell you what is in there. And we shouldn't be bashed the way people are doing, because this country requires its own scientists like us to also protect ourselves against any wrong, probably, technology. You know, Jeff, there is no any safe technology world over, including aeroplanes that when you go in, you know probability of reaching the destination is just 50%. But there is a reason why we are never told that you are going to reach there or not. It's because it's tightly regulated. GMO is one of the products that is overly regulated. And if it goes through that process until it's out there and NBA clears it, please eat the GMO. It is fine. We have seen it in medicine. It is also the same technology we are using for food. May Kenyans not panic. And there is no crisis, by the way, with the technology. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Professor Odwar.
Thanks.
Dr. Roy Mugira, Emmanuel Atamba. Thank you so much, gentlemen. This debate will continue for sure. And the thing that my takeaway from this, from all of you, is that GMO is not a silver bullet.
No, it has never been.
It's not the end all. It's not the answer to it all. It's part of the toolkit in the toolbox.
Beautiful.
That's the basic thing. And the best part is, you get a choice. Either eat it or don't. It's up to you. It's that simple. We don't need to make such a fuss about it. But again, the debate must continue and people must know. Maybe a little more public participation, town hall meetings, that kind of stuff. Let the folks on the ground know what GMO is all about. That's the bottom line. Thanks so much for all your feedback. Folks, remember, if it's Wednesday, it's all about those 3 letters on the keyboard that follow each other. JKL. Thanks for being a part of the show, folks. As always, good night, good luck. God bless you all, and God bless Kenya with all our GMOs.